Yes, hello, this is your Friday Night Live F1 news. We're trying something different tonight. What we're going to do is we're going to cover all of this week's major news stories. We've got all the stuff on Christian Horner, from his deal done with Red Bull Racing, other news that have come out about him with the corner contract clause. We've got breaking news from today with Cadillac agreeing terms for their reserve driver Jack Crawford. We'll be talking about that. And also we've got some really nice news about Roman Grosjean, who got to drive the Haas at a test at Mugello, with Io being his engineer for the day. We've got all sorts to talk about, but this is Friday night. This is where we get to relax a little bit. We can chill out, have a beer, have a glass of wine. I've got a cup of coffee, and we can just, have a more relaxed approach to your Formula One news. I hope you are here. Get in the chat and let me know you are here. Say hello and we will get into it. So, lots to talk about. We've got bits about Toto Wolff, some Christian Horner, quite a bit of Christian Horner. We've obviously got the Jack Crawford stuff, a little bit of Cadillac, a little bit of Red Bull. We have got lots to get into. So, where do we start? Shall we start with today's breaking news? Okay, Graham Loden, masterstroke, I believe, from Cadillac. They have agreed terms for their reserve driver, which is Jack Crawford. So Jack Crawford, your 20-year-old F2 driver, bringing you a win in Monaco, bringing you a win at Silverstone, and bringing you a win at Baku last weekend. Currently sitting P2 in the F2 Championship, 31 super license points, very important that, and he will have the required 40 super license points by the end of the season. So Cadillac, hey Kyle, I'm going to come to your question in just a second. So the reason why they had to go with Cadillac, it's all about the future of the team, right? They've got Sergio Perez, they've got Valtteri Bottas, two very experienced drivers. They know how to bring the car home in the points. Bottas brings the car home in the points 60% of the time. Perez brings the car home in the points 67% of the time. And that's what Cadillac need while they're building the car. But we all know Cadillac want an American driver. Of course they do. They want an American power unit. Of course they do. But there was a couple of drivers in the mix. So this is why Kyle has said, what happens to Colton Herta? Exactly. Another great American driver, brilliant rookie. He's won Indy 500. He's won Daytona. The guy can drive, right? But he hasn't got the required super license points. And because he's in the IndyCar Championship, you only get awarded super license points on your finishing position in the championship. You don't get a point for winning a race. You don't get anything like that. You only get points in the IndyCar Championship from where you finish. So you have to do a full season and see how many super license points you get at the end of the season. Unfortunately for Colton Herta, his IndyCar Championship hasn't gone that well, even though he does have some super license points. I think at the start of the year, he started off with like 31, 32. He wasn't going to get the required super license points, but obviously Cadillac like him, and he's part of the Cadillac family. So what does it mean for Colton Herta is Kyle's question. Well, with Jack getting the reserve driver role, because he will have the required super license points, it means that if anything happens to Bottas, anything happens to Sergio Perez, he can step in and drive the car. And he is the future of the team. He's only 20 years old. But Colton Herta is still part of the Cadillac family, still part of the TWG family. So he will drive with one of the TWG teams in F2. And he'll basically be on what we call a development driver contract. So he'll still be part of the Cadillac family. They will develop him next year in F2, purely to get his super license points. And then the following season, he'll also do FP1s, by the way, as well. He'll do the scheduled free practice 1 sessions in Cadillac to, again, he gets a super license point every time that he does an FP1. So the idea with Colton Herta is they will let him get his super license points next season, and then let's see, right? Because Jack Crawford, we don't know whether he is just going to be incredibly quick in that Cadillac, and because he's a reserve driver, even though they're paying Bottas and Perez big money, he could still drive for them in the Grand Prix. If anything happens to those guys, he can get a drive. But the most important thing with a 20-year-old driver, a rookie driver, is we've learned this from Kimi Antonelli this year over at Mercedes. You've got to bring them through slowly. So Jack Crawford is the future of Cadillac, and it's a long-term thing with Jack. You get him in as your reserve driver next year. It's a long-term project, as Cadillac is a 3 to 5 year project by the time they get it to be a fully American team. But he is the future of Cadillac. Colton Herta is going to be part of the future as well. What we may see in 2 years' time, a Jack Crawford, Colton Herta lineup in Cadillac. And I think that's what they think. Exactly, Kyle. Crawford Herta 2028. That is what they are keeping their options open for. But unfortunately for Colton Herta, he does not have the required super license points to be the reserve driver, whereas Jack Crawford does. And we can't also knock that Jack Crawford is quick. He's currently second in F2. He's already amassed 31 super license points. And by the end of the season, of course, he's going to have the 40 required points. So it's big, big news this today. Terms agreed. Expect the official announcement from Cadillac, probably at Singapore, around that time. But trust me, it's coming. And we need to thank my man on the ground, Tubby George, for again, quality information coming out of Cadillac. Tubby George letting us have it right. So this is the big news from today. Jack Crawford is going to be your reserve driver at Cadillac. And I'm here for it. It's a good choice. He's 20 years old. Even he has to wait 2 years to get a full-time drive. He's only going to be 22. And Colton Herta's only 26. So, 28, he's definitely part of the mix. So don't worry. Herta is still part of the Cadillac family. And he will be driving one of the TWG teams in F2. Hopefully that answers your Colton Herta question, Kyle. Yes, Gemma, Tubby's tips. Hey, that should be a section. Although he doesn't want to, no one can ever know who Tubby is because Tubby George is, I can't say anymore. He's on the paddock. He's in the paddock. We can't tell you who he is. That's the agreement, but we do get good information. And as proven by the fact that we were the first to tell you it was going to be Perez, Bottas and him. And Jack Crawford, we told you this almost a month ago, 20th of August, and it's all coming true, So yeah, good news for Cadillac, but it's a big story. I've done a little video on it from earlier today. Make sure you go and have a look. James Allen thinks, I think Destroy TV is Tubby George. Hey, James. Nice to have you in the chat. Destroy Television is another one of our regulars in the community. So James thinks he knows who Tubby George is. I'm going to tell you one thing. I'm sure he'll tell you himself. It's not Destroy Television. It's someone out of the paddock. But I'm not going to tell you who it is. So yeah, that's your first big story of today and today's story. But like you say, this is Friday Night Live, baby. This is your weekly F1 news. All sort of, we're going to go over it so you can discuss it. You've digested it. We've done the shows this week, but this is where we sort of just recap what's been going on. And you can't keep this man out of the goddamn news. And of course, Christian Horner. So we started off the week by announcing deal done. Christian Horner is agreed his $100 million payout with Cadillac. He could have got more with Cadillac, with Red Bull Racing. He could have got more, but he took less of a payoff in order for him to get back to the grid in F1 2026. Now, we did a great show on this for Christian Horner, and we gave you a rundown of his options, and these options are absolutely fantastic. I'm going to quickly bring them up for you now. The Christian Horner options for 2026 and beyond. Right. And I've got some more news on the Alpine option, which we will talk about right now. So these are your Christian Horner options that are sort of floating around right now. We've got the Alpine option, because Alpine are in trouble. Renault, no more engine development program. So they're going with the Mercedes power unit for 2026 and beyond. They're in real trouble. Renault shares down, and they were looking for investment. They're actually looking to sell the whole team at one point for 1.5 billion. But now the story goes like this. Renault would like to sell 20% of their racing team, Alpine racing team, for £300 million, right? Now, originally, when Horner was tentatively looking at what he was going to do in 2026, him and his old friend, Flavio Briatore, have been plotting. Flavio Briatore, special advisor over at Alpine, running things right now while the team is in disarray. Big friends with Christian Horner, been friends since all the way back in 2005. He was instrumental in Horner getting the job at Red Bull Racing, they've been plotting. And Horner looked like a shoo-in to take over that 20% stake over at Alpine. But there's been a couple of developments since then. Since Horner has become big box office news over in the States, he now has a huge amount of money backing him, because what the Americans know is they understand sport franchises, and where there's big investment companies, they want to get into the F1 business. And I'm talking Vanguard, I'm talking BlackRock and others. Now, what that means for Horner is now he doesn't have to just consider the Alpine opportunity. He's got other opportunities, and let's go back to those. Actually, before I do that, I've got some breaking news on the Alpine opportunity. So it's been reported today by F1 oversteer David Comerford that there are problems with the Alpine opportunity due to one factor. Right, I mentioned it before. Alpine are going to be running the Mercedes power unit in 2026, which means they've got a special relationship with, you guessed it, Toto Wolff. Get in the car, George. Now, Toto Wolff is not particularly good friends with Christian Horner, apparently, according to David Comerford. And he thinks this could be a spanner in the works for Alpine, because they think that that relationship could be disrupted by Horner's presence over at Alpine. Here's the deal. It's not true, because, first of all, Alpine have signed a multi-year deal with Mercedes for the supply of those engines. There was no Horner clause in that contract that said if Horner becomes a team principal or owner of your team, that we will not honour that contract. So it's not true. Toto Wolff also has gone on record to say that he misses Horner on the grid because Horner is like the protagonist that brings drama to the sport, and he thinks F1 needs that. So even though Toto Wolff doesn't particularly like Christian Horner, did he like him being his nemesis on the grid? Yeah, he did, because it was good for the game, right? It's good for the sport. So there's no truth in that article from F1 Oversteer. Toto Wolff would work with Horner because he'd have to. The contract that's been signed does not have a Christian Horner exclusion clause, which allows Mercedes to back out of that deal. So that's a little bit of news that came out today, but it just isn't true. So going back to the other opportunities that we've talked about this week for Christian Horner, and the big one that's been gathering momentum, and we really pushed this. We were the first people to really push this story, and it's about the Haas F1 team. Now, the difference with the Haas F1 team opportunity, it's solely owned by Gene Haas. Okay, they have a kind of a works relationship with Toyota, who have obviously invested in the team. But Gene Haas, what he says goes, and he doesn't. In history, he doesn't play nice with others, and he'll tell you that himself. But things have changed over at Haas because, well, they've built their car from the Ferrari parts bin, and they have not been competitive. They've never really been competitive, have they? Right? And Gene Haas is never even at the Grand Prix. Like, he's not a hands-on leader. You know, that's why they have Io as a team principal. But Gene Haas is open to American money coming into that team, even if it's backing Christian Horner, and that story is gathering momentum. But what would that deal look like? Well, it'd look like a much bigger deal, actually, than what's on offer at Renault Alpine. That deal would look like, I believe, more of a 50-50 share between Horner's consortium and Gene Haas. But Horner being the man running all the racing team and actually acting as team principal and owner. But the investment into the team would be a lot more than that £300 million. You're going to be looking, you're going to be looking at probably £800 million, I'm guessing, for that deal. But now Horner's got all this money behind him. The Haas opportunity looks real. Back that with the relationship with Toyota, where we could then look at a works relationship with Toyota. Honda are back in next season in 2026 with power units for Aston Martin. So the Haas story is gathering momentum, and we were the first to talk about it. So yeah, that actually is quite an exciting situation. I'm going to go to the chat. Let's have a look. Kyle says, this is one thing I hate about F1. I've mourned losing Ricardo and K-Mag several times. Now I'll be losing Bottas again in a couple of years. It's true, Kyle. You will. Bottas, Cadillac will definitely be bringing in their younger drivers. James Allen says, hey, Gemma, if Tony doesn't give up within 30 days, I'm going to get a T-shirt saying I'm Tommy George and get Johnny Herbert to wear it in the paddock. Revenge is sweet. James Allen, you know I've already got those T-shirts in production. You know I have. I told you that on the show yesterday. Yeah, so James Allen, 500 million. Does Horner bring a backer? Yes. I hope you've been watching. Horner's got huge backing from massive investment funds. That's why his opportunities have changed significantly. And this is why I've got the Horner options up on screen right now. And this is what we were talking about earlier in the week. And you obviously weren't watching the show. God damn it. Where were you? Go back and watch the videos. So the Haas opportunities got bigger and bigger and bigger for Horner. The Audi opportunity, I'm giving that that's less credible now as the week's gone on. There was talk that Audi would be keen to sell some of their share in their takeover of Sauber for next season, and all the resources behind Audi. But the problem is the stake in Audi. I think Horner would have to deal with an awful lot of bureaucracy within that team. Audi do know how to win in motorsport, proven. But that opportunity is looking less and less likely. Yeah, BlackRock Haas team, exactly. BlackRock, Vanguard. There's plenty of money coming in, let me tell you, Kyle. And they're all... But the thing is about the clever... Like, we talk about dumb money and the smart money. Smart money is always these big investment funds like BlackRock and Vanguard. We're the dumb money, right? Horner, with his own money, would be classed as the dumb money. Now, the smart money... The American investment funds, which want to get into sports franchises, they do one thing and they do one thing well. They back a person. It's not just a team. They find their guy, put him front and center, and Horner is that guy. He's a winner, isn't he? How many championships has he won? 14 drivers and constructors. He took a team from zero to hero in 5 years. It's exactly the type of person that American money wants to back. And that's why Horner now, his value has gone through the roof. Because F1's value is going through the roof. It's growing. Even the F1 movie's done nearly 700 million's worth of business. The new fans coming into this game, into this sport, is very, very exciting. And America are really embracing Formula One. So that's why Horner is the only viable option for the smart money to back, and they are throwing money at him. Which brings me to option number 4, which we spoke about earlier in the week, and that is, this one excites me more than anything. A lot of people think it's not feasible, not possible, but I'm telling you, it genuinely is, and that is Horner Racing. Christian Horner Racing, whatever the title's going to be, but Horner's name will be in lights. There is one final FIA F1 license available under the current regulations. The current regulations state we can have 12 Formula One teams in the field. We've only got 11 next season. We've got 10 right now. With Cadillac, it's 11. There's one final license up for grabs. The FIA charge $500 million for a license. And then it's, hey, you've got your license. Go build your team, boys. But actually, that is the cheapest way to bring a team onto the grid. Because F1 business is booming, the cheapest team on the grid is going to cost you 1.5 billion plus. If you wanted to try and get hold of a Mercedes team, 3.5 billion. So the cheapest way onto the grid is to get a license and build your team. And this is where it gets exciting. With the money that's now backing Horner, that's a real possibility. The timeline might change. If Horner goes down the Horner Racing avenue with his billions that are now behind him, they secure the license, $500 million, and then he spends all of 2027 building his team to hit the grid in 2028. Now, why is that a viable case? Well, because if you watched my show earlier in the week about the Horner clause in key staff contracts at Red Bull Racing, Well, you'll know why that's important. We discovered this week that key personnel on Christian Horner's team at Red Bull Racing had what we are calling the Horner Clause. And the Horner Clause states in their contract that should Christian Horner leave the team, they are allowed to leave too. Now, a lot of these engineers are on 3-4 year deals. So why does Horner Racing now become really viable? Well, it's because once he decides that's what he's going to do, any of those key members of engineers or staff that still have great relationships and still follow Horner, he can cherry pick those people from Red Bull Racing, take them to his new team or another team that he joins without any penalty. It just comes down to whether those engineers want to come and work with him. Now that is why Horner Racing becomes far more viable than what people are considering. And it really is. His biggest hurdle with Horner Racing is, his biggest hurdle for Horner Racing is that the FIA get to choose who they give. It's not just about who can pay for it. There's plenty of people who can pay for that license. It's they get to choose who gets it. And they want marquee names. Is Horner a marquee name? Maybe. He's definitely box office. And Eric says, Horner is not a cool F1 team name. I have to agree. James jumps in the chat saying, Team Hornier. I could see it. Can you see it on the car? Hornier. Get Hornier. Hey, listen, anything can happen in this crazy sport, but Christian Horner has really dominated the headlines in F1 news this week. Team Hornier, I'm here for it. But yeah, he really has. And buy that merch, James says. So yeah, there's been a lot from Christian Horner this week. Tons, in fact. But I'm going to go on to a new story that came out today, which is really favours Red Bull Racing. I mean, this is crazy. Let me tell you what this news story that's come out today. So, Laurent McKees is rubbing his hands together. Let me tell you, look at his smiley little face. And let me tell you why. So, we all know that the Red Bull Ford powertrain is having some issues, right? That's the development of their new powertrain, their unique powertrain for 2026. The main problem being is it's running out of juice before the end of the straight. Can you believe it? Because it's 50% of electrification, 50% internal combustion engine. The data that's come out from the Red Bull Racing Ford powertrain is on some straights, it's running out of juice and they're losing max power. So the car is effectively slowing down before the end of the straight because they're running out of juice. Wow. That's a pretty big problem. And it seems like it was unique to Red Bull Racing. Now, Christian Horner knew this, by the way, when he was developing this engine. And Christian Horner lobbied to the FIA to say we should have a 5 to 10% margin of grace, basically, between electric power and internal combustion power. So what that basically means is that should the ICE, the internal combustion engine, deliver 60% of the power and the battery deliver 40% of the power, that should still be okay. So even though they're aiming for 50-50, there should be a 10% margin of variation between the two. Toto Wolff said, back in the day with Christian Horner, no freaking way are we doing that. That is never going to happen. It's never going to happen. The regulations are the regulations. It's 50-50. No, Horner. There's no margin for change or variance. That was my Toto Wolff impression again. Now, here's the thing. Even though that's what that's what the argument was back in Horner's because Horner knew that they were having these problems with the Red Bull powertrain. This is what they basically said. Horner lobbied for a 5 to 10% adjustment to the ratio. Okay, his belief is that the F1 pivoting to sustainable fuels, they can afford to lean more on the V6 while still achieving their goal of net zero carbon emissions by 2030. It would appear his initiative has been successful, even though he wasn't there to see it through. Wow. So the FIA have basically said, okay, you can have a 5 to 10% variance between the internal combustion engine and the electrical power. Now, why is that important? One, Toto Wolff said it would never happen. Two, Christian Horner was the man that lobbied for it because he knew the Red Bull power unit and the Ford power unit was struggling, and he anticipated it. So again, this little fella, Laurent Mekies, benefits again from a Christian Horner fight, which he ends up winning after leaving Red Bull, and it benefits the team for Laurent Mekies. This guy just keeps landing. He keeps on landing in roses. He does, because it's the same thing that happened with the new upgrade, which has changed the fortune of Red Bull Racing this season, of the new floor upgrade that Max ran in Monza, got P1. He ran it in Baku, got P1, won both Grand Prix, and that upgrade, all the credit was given to Laurent Mekies by Helmut Marko. However, it transpires it was a Horner upgrade that was been in development that he commissioned, that he authorized, that he wanted. Yet some of these things could take 3 to 6 months to develop, and then he gets the credit for it. So again, Laurent Mekies getting credit for Horner's work. It's outstanding, really. It's outstanding. It's outrageous. But Laurent Mekies, yeah. So that's what's happened. So great news on the powertrain front for Red Bull Racing and Ford, because it mitigates their problem. It means that they will not run out of power on the long straights. You couldn't write this stuff. But again, it was a Horner fight. It was a blooming Horner fight. I'm going to go to the chat. So let's see what we've got. Eric says, there's no regeneration happening for the electrical side of the power unit. Eventually, you run out of power electrically and rely solely on the ICE engine. You do, but if half of the power is being generated by the electricity, but you run out of electricity, you're going to get a car that's going 300 kilometers an hour that suddenly drops down to 250 right at the end of the straight. You can't have that, you know, and that's the problem. Run out of battery power and you lose top speed. What you want to happen is you run out of battery power. What Horner's saying is that you can compensate that by the power coming from the V6 engine, right? So it doesn't have to be 50-50. You can the V6 can deliver 60% of the power to maintain speed, and the electricity can do 40% of the power. And that's why he wants that variance factored in. And it looks like he's got it. I mean, I know I'm getting quite techie, but again, a Christian Horner fight, which seems to work out well for Red Bull Racing. Even though Toto Wolff said, no, Christian, no, 50-50. But yeah, turns out the FIA have gone, all right then, you can have a 5 to 10% margin of variance between the two. That changes things, I guess. Crazy. But that is what's going on. But so Christian Horner winning another fight. And again, just on that, we've also talked earlier on in the week about this guy. I've got to bring him in because he is the Dart Lord. Quick reminder, Helmut Marko is the guy to blame, by the way, for heaping all the credit onto Laurent Mekies for all of Christian Horner's work. It's a Helmut Marko PR offensive because he wants to be proven right with the decision to get Horner ousted out of the team and to have an engineer running the thing, running Red Bull Racing. But who is really running Red Bull Racing? We know Helmut Marko. We know that you're the sole director of Red Bull Racing. We know it was you that got him ousted. We know it was you who ended up, you know, getting Laurent Mekies, team principal, without any directorial responsibilities for Red Bull Racing, effectively with less power, and we know it benefits you. And don't you think we'll ever forget it? Helmut Marko, we know you're the Dart Lord, Svengalian around. And we did talk about that in an earlier show this week, so you might want to go and check that out. It was a lot of fun. Right, what's going on in the chat? Let's see. So Eric's been, Eric's taking some of you at school. about how the electrical 50/50 is going to work next year. Hybrid street cars are less efficient when traveling along straight roads, better in congested stop and go driving. Yeah, because you got to remember, stop and go, harsh braking is where the regeneration comes from, right? So we're going from a weirdly complicated system right now with an 85-15% split between ICE, 50% electrification on the current cars, where the regeneration is coming from exhaust gases, which is really complicated, very expensive, and really unnecessary. That's why they're simplifying the power units for next year, where they're going to regenerative braking, basically, just like you see in a Tesla. And so how do we regenerate the battery? Harsh. It's the braking effect into the corners, which means actually the car's going to have to be driven very differently. We're going to get a lot of regenerative braking from the motor, where the driver's going to not really have much response or really not be touching the brake pedal. It's going to be very different driving style for 2026. They're going to be literally allowing the car to do the braking itself, which I think's a bit of a cheat, if I'm honest. If you can program the car to sort of, and it's all under regenerative braking and the car does a lot of the work for you, I'm not sure how I like that. But that's what we've got. It's what we're stuck with for the next generation of Formula One cars. Regenerative braking is the thing. But we don't know any of this tech's going to work, if I'm honest. Right now, we're pissing in the wind. We've had reports out from Ferrari that they've not even had their power unit on the bench. They've lost their top 2 engineers. I mean, it's crazy. They've gone over to Audi, by the way. So it's crazy scenes with this 2026 power unit nonsense. I honestly don't know how it's going to work out. I think Honda are going to bring something special with Aston Martin. I think Adrian Newey is going to bring a special package. Aston Martin are going to be great, I'm sure. But we just don't know. We just don't know. And I love major rule changes because we might see teams like Williams coming in and doing something special. So it is quite exciting. I'm going to go to the chat. Kyle says, Horner made a mistake in the off-season with a bad wind tunnel data. He did. Started off on the back foot, had to start over. We're now seeing the results of his work. Max could dominate from here. Couldn't agree more, Kyle. Love that point. Love that point. Because that brings me on to the other big news of this week. Perfect timing. The other big news we've got to talk about mighty Max Verstappen. The impact of that Red Bull. And Kyle's got it absolutely right. So, Max Verstappen, off the back of another pole position in Baku and another race win. Back-to-back poles, back-to-back wins. We've seen a resurgence in the Red Bull performance. The car is poised. It's balanced through the slower corners. We're seeing a different Red Bull car. And like Kyle says, they messed up the aero, didn't they, for this car at the beginning of the season. And they've been playing catch-up ever since. Bad wind tunnel data, amongst other bad decisions, I would guess. Now, Horner then, on the back foot, is commissioning new floors, new aero, upgrades to the car to try and fix the problem. They could take 3 to 6 months to come into fruition. He then gets sacked at Silverstone, immediately after Silverstone Grand Prix. And now, all the results of that hard work that he put into play to try and solve that Red Bull car are now getting rolled out onto the car. And he's not there to see the fruits of his labour. And now Helmut Marko's put Laurent Mekies, which is the right choice to become team principal if you're going to get rid of Horner, to steady the ship, do some work with Yuki. I can understand the reasons why he got the job, but he shouldn't get the credit for turning that Red Bull car around. The credit does belong to Horner. And now we're seeing Max Verstappen with a genuine title contender car. Because Max Verstappen, if anyone can go on and win the next 7 races, it's him. Give him a car that can do it, it's him. Now, like Jacques Villeneuve said this week, Max can do it. He's gone from 104 points behind Oscar Piastri to 69 points in 3 races. And what Jacques Villeneuve quite bluntly said, it is very possible. 3 races. That's it. 75 points. 3 race wins. 3 DNS from Oscar. Now, you might think that unlikely, but it's possible. It is possible. But regardless of whether Max is going to win the World Drivers' Championship, can he win the next 7 races? Yeah, he could. This car at Singapore, this Red Bull car at Singapore was going to tell us everything, because low downforce track, Monza, did brilliantly. A lower downforce track in Baku did brilliantly. Singapore's a different proposition. Street circuit, tight, twisty, medium downforce. If the car does well in Singapore, I think we could see an exciting end to the season with Mighty Max putting in stellar performances. We could see 7 wins. It'd be remarkable, and I'm here for it, and I want the drama, but credit has to go to Max for being the greatest driver on the grid, and credit has to go to ChristianHorner for his upgrades, which have hit the car now and made a massive difference. And I think really everyone in the paddock knows publicly the PR offensive from Helmut Marko. Like, oh, come on, Helmut, we know what you're about. We know what you're trying to do. We know the PR offensive, what you're trying to do. We know you're the guy behind getting rid of Horner. And we know you're the guy with all the power at Red Bull Racing now, even though Laurent McKee is team principal. But there are arguments, though. I talked about this on a show earlier the week as well. There are arguments between Laurent McKee and Helmut Marko. Helmut Marko is going to win the argument, but regarding who's going to get the Red Bull drive. Helmut Marko says Isaac Hadjar is a shoo-in. An absolute shoo-in, but Laurent McKee is saying, hang on a minute, look at what Yuki's doing in that car now. He's behaving like a very good number 2 driver. The gap's narrowed. We've given them fairer cars with similar upgrades, new floors on both, and we're seeing Yuki better performances. He did still finish behind Liam Lawson in Baku, though. So that's the discussion that's going on over at Red Bull at the moment. But we all know the Dark Lord himself, Helmut Marko, will get his wishes. So I think it's pretty nailed on that Isaac Hadjar is going to be the number 2 driver at Red Bull. The big change, I think, is that in Racing Bulls, I think there's a very, very strong chance we could see your 2-driver lineup being Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson. And all the talk of Arvid Lindblad, it means he doesn't get promoted. And it would, because Alan Permain let it slip, didn't he, in Baku? He said, I'm not sure it'd be the right time. His F2 performances are solid, but they've dropped off. But more importantly, the F1 2026 regulations are so different. The cars are brand new platforms. We don't know how good our car's going to be until we get to Melbourne. Nobody does. And is that the right time to bring a rookie into the team? Probably not. And everybody's looking at Kimi Antonelli's season and going, well, yeah, maybe it was too soon, maybe it was too soon. So anyway, that's the Red Bull news from the week. Helmut Marko, Christian Horner, Max Verstappen, Laurent McKee's all in the news, all in your Formula One news this week. Gemma says, the big question is, who are the stormtroopers within Red Bull? Is that because of my Dark Lord comments about Marko? James Allen saying, Kyle, how would you rate Yuki, mate? Kyle says P19 ahead of Stroll. Oh, Kyle, I would have agreed with you. I've been guilty of Yuki bashing a lot this season. I have, and I've got to say, but I have to give credit where it's due. Doesn't Yuki look better since Laurent McKee has taken over at Red Bull? Don't you think? Don't you think so? Like, he really has done better. He's qualified better. He got people qualified P6, finished P6. We are seeing a better Yuki. Has he done enough to keep a drive next year? Not yet. Not yet. I still think he's in the audition process, right? I think he's got 7 Grand Prix left to show everyone at Red Bull and Racing Bulls that he deserves a drive in one of the cars. The Wooden says, new regs are the perfect time for rookies. Clean slate for everyone. I do understand that argument. New cars, clean slate for everyone. But here's the issue. Here's the issue. If you bring a rookie into a brand new car with brand new regulations, you're not confident on the data that rookie is delivering to the team to develop the car. That's the problem. They may be correct in their data. They may be absolutely brilliant. But because they are an unquantified source of information, it makes it risky to listen to their feedback. That is why when you want brand new regulation change, because you know in that first season of a new regulation change, every team is bringing upgrades to every single Grand Prix. So the data they get back from their drivers is vital. Now, with a rookie, you're basically saying, well, I don't really give a shit what you have to say, mate. If I want your opinion, I'll give it to you. Because that's the truth. But with an experienced driver, you can rely more on their feedback for the development of the car. And that's the only thing I'd say, Wooden, about the new regs time to bringing in a rookie. You are losing half of your data input from reliable sources. And that's the problem with the rookie. That's the problem with the rookie for 2026. But I do get your point. Clean slate for everyone. But the problem with first seasons, with major regulation changes, is the upgrades are coming so quickly from the minor to the major. Even within a Grand Prix, the changes come thick and fast, because you could have a 4-second spread between first and last on the grid when you get major rule changes. And that's the issue. Kyle says they won't get data if Yuki crashes the car. Oh, come on, Kyle. You are right about that. You are right about that. Oh, stop Yuki bashing. I've done too much of it this season. I've got to give him some credit. He's been better. He's been better. Yeah, but I think that's the thinking behind Alan Permain. I think that's the thinking behind some of the teams. Bringing a rookie through at the right time. Because what you want to do with a rookie is you want to be fully confident in your car. So then when you put a rookie in, you know that it's not the car, right? You know what the car's capable of, but still the unknown quantity now is the rookie. How good's a rookie, right? So so Kyle again, last one. Yuki rookie. Yuki rookie. Say it fast and they sound the same. Oh God. Stop Yuki bashing. And you got me calling him Yuki then. Stop it. Listen, I hope Yuki puts in 7 worldy performances between now and the end of the season. Get out some podiums. Let's see what he can do. He's got some good support there now, right? Laura McKees is definitely a fan. He's definitely a fan. But we'll see. We'll see how he goes in Singapore. We'll see how he goes in Singapore. Because, you know, I would say I'm quite excited about Arvid Lindblad. I saw some really promising things from him in F2 early in the season. But he has dropped off. Sounded like Peter Windsor saying that. Yuki like that. Yeah. I know Peter Windsor. Yeah, it's true. But yeah, I think that's the thing. That's what we're gonna. That's probably what we're gonna see. It's an audition from Yuki. It's an audition still from Liam Lawson. He did himself a lot of favors in Baku, qualifying P3, bringing the car home P5, and keeping Yuki behind him. So yeah, Liam Lawson, credit where it's due, putting a good solid shift. Isaac Hadjar, I still think is rookie of the season for me, but that's what's going on at Red Bull and Racing Bulls. All the drama's been coming from them. Oh, of course, we've got some new drama, which I've not spoken about. And I'm going to go back to, I know a lot of people are asking about Toto Wolff. Not about Toto Wolff, but about George Russell's contract. Get in the car, George! I can tell you that contract negotiations are still in the same spot, because the Max Verstappen influence on the George Russell contract at Mercedes is now working against Toto Wolff. Why is that? Okay. prior to the mid-season break, while Max Verstappen and Toto Wolff are all hanging out on Toto Wolff's yacht, they're discussing 2027, doing a little shake-hand deal, saying, yes, Max, we're going to pay you to come and join us. Toto Wolff thinks Max Verstappen's nailed on, hence why he stalled on George Russell's contract, hence why he really disrespected George Russell in a lot of ways, and why George Russell's gone, hang on a minute, I want more money, I want a 2-year deal, and I want less press and sponsor commitments. That's what I want. I want rewarding for the good job that I've been doing. Whereas Toto Wolff were basically offering him a contract extension, not much more money, loads of the same press commitments, and no guarantee he's going to be there in 2027. And basically saying, if I can get Max, you're out the door. So George is like, hang on a minute, that's whatever. That's not good. I want a 2-year deal. So here's what's changed. First of all, the 2-year deal looks like it's going to happen. And I'll tell you why. Max Verstappen's fortunes at Red Bull have just improved, right? The car's got better, looking competitive. He's won 2 races back to back. He's got 2 poles. And he's contracted till the end of 2028. And all Max Verstappen cares about is being in the fastest car. He doesn't give a shit about who the team is, if I'm honest. He wants the fastest car. Red Bull are now the fastest car on the grid. And he's going to be like, hang on a minute. I have to drive for Red Bull in 2026. And if the car's fast, do you think he's not going to leave to go to Mercedes for any amount of money. He's going to stay in the fastest car. And Toto Wolff might be going, holy shit, what if this Red Bull is fast in 2026? And I haven't got a driver now for 2027. I'm pissed off what you could argue is a 2nd or 3rd best driver in Formula One. So here's how Toto Wolff is pivoting. Kimi Antonelli is only going to get a 1-year deal. George Russell will get his 2-year deal. And he'll get more money than what was initially offered. And the driver at risk for 2027, where it was going to be George Russell, is now going to be Kimi Antonelli. Because that's the only card Toto Wolff has to play. So now they're dotting the I's and crossing the T's. But my man on the ground, Tubby George, said the way it's sitting at the moment, and we will probably get an announcement by Singapore, is it'll be a 2-year deal for George Russell. They're going to be close to matching Lando Norris's pay, around 25 mil a year. And the press commitments, I'm not sure how many days he'll get off, but at the moment it's like 60 days of press and sponsor commitments, and there may be a reduction in press and sponsor commitments. And it'll all be love, and it'll all be rewarding George. But the reason why George now has all the cards in his favour with this negotiation is because Max Verstappen's doing so much better. It's definitely not nailed on that he's going to leave Red Bull in 2027, because Red Bull look like a good package now, don't they? And if they win in Singapore, Toto Wolff will be feeling like he has got some humble pie to eat with his relationship with George Russell. Let me tell you that. So that's the latest on the contract negotiations going on over at Mercedes. And George Russell strengthening his contract negotiation position. And Toto Wolff position getting slightly weakened by the success of Max Verstappen. Oh, what an ironic world that we live in. Kyle says, I just wish George would grow some facial hair and look like he's hit puberty. Why does nobody like George Russell? What is it? I said it's because he's got that. George Russell's problem is he's got that school prefect thing about him, hasn't he? He looks like the sort of kid that was head boy, the hallway monitor, and if you got caught doing something wrong, he'd grass you up. And that's why he's the head of the drivers association, representing all the drivers. He's probably a really nice guy. He's doing loads for the sport. But I don't know what it is. People don't like him. He's bloody quick. He's a bloody good driver. A bloody good driver. And definitely one of the drivers of this season, what he's done with that Mercedes car, totally outperforming where it should be. Getting a win in Canada. Second place in Baku was a great drive. And he was under the weather. Apparently, he wasn't under the weather, I don't think. I think that was just a story because they didn't want him to face the press because they knew every single question would be, George! I know, the press don't talk like Total. They're like, George, what about your contract? What is happening? And he didn't want to answer those questions. So he was exonerated from all those press duties whilst they are still dotting the I's and crossing the T's. Sorry, I'm going to sneeze. Hang on. It's gone. Oh, I thought I was going to sneeze. It's gone. You know when you need to sneeze and you can feel it and then it just goes? How weird. That's what happened. So yeah, that's the situation and the update on the George Russell contract. I expect that by Singapore, at least by the end of the Grand Prix, that will be sorted and be resolved. But I think if the 2027 plans for Toto are still afoot, i.e. Operation Get Max Verstappen in a Mercedes, then it would actually be Kimi Antonelli who is at risk, not George Russell. And I think that's the way it's going to plan out. And that is what's going on in your Mercedes camp. Thank you very much to Tubby George for that update as well. And yeah, and I did want to end on a really, really heartwarming story that was in the press today. I'm sure we all remember Roman Grosjean. That's not Roman Grosjean, but I'm coming to Io in a minute. So Roman Grosjean, Haas driver. He was a crazy driver on the F1 grid, to be fair. But he was in a fireball crash in the 2020 Bahrain Grand Prix. And that was literally the end of his F1 career. Now, some of you will remember this crash. It was about 150 miles an hour on the straight, veered off left into the barrier. The car split in two, literally split in two and engulfed in fire. Honestly, if you saw the crash, you would be like, no one could survive it. But it's a testament to the way modern F1 cars are built and to to be fair, the car was a fireball, yet he walked away with nothing more than burned hands. But if you look, that footage is out there to go and see. But anyway, Roman Grosjean, a crazy driver on the grid, but an absolute gentleman off it. He returned into the Haas in their program, which is what they actually called it, the testing of previous cars program. So Roman Grosjean got to drive a Formula One car for the first time since that incredible accident. And do you know what? The reason why I've got Io, your team boss at Haas, your team principal Haas on the screen, is because Io was Roman Grosjean's race engineer whilst he was driving for Haas. And now Io is now the team boss. And what's really nice about this is Roman Grosjean got to go to Mugello circuit to do some testing in the old car, a previous car program. And he said he had the best time. He absolutely loved it. And Io was his race engineer during the testing. And I just thought that was absolutely lovely. I thought it was absolutely lovely. And I'm so pleased that Roman Grosjean got to relive that moment in a Haas car, testing at Mugello. Don't listen. Grosjean's fine. He has gone on and driven in the IndyCar circuit, so he has still been a race car driver since that accident. But I just think it was absolutely lovely. He said it was a special day. Gene Haas and Io Komatsu made it happen. It was a wet day, but fantastic. I felt a bit rusty at first, but then everything came back. I even got to do a standing start, and my last standing start was Bahrain 2020. So this time it turned out way better. I'm very grateful. A unique opportunity to some of the people that were in Australia 2016 and get to drive the new generation of car. It was fantastic. I'm very grateful. There are no other words. He said it brought him to tears. So Roman Grosjean and Io Komatsu, class act. And I'm so glad that Roman Grosjean got to have a positive experience after his fireball crash back in 2020. And that's a nice story for us to end on in the news. But I thought that was very, very cool that he got to go and do that. And I thought it was very cool that Io, his original race engineer, the team principal over at Haas, was his race engineer during the test. So very, very pleased for Roman. Great to see him doing well, looking healthy, and back in an F1 car after that. Oh my gosh, you should go and have if you haven't seen the picture of that accident or the footage, wow, it was crazy. But he did walk away with nothing but burnt hands. Horrendous though, horrendous. Listen, guys, I want to thank every one of you. Thank you to the Wooden, thank you to Kyle, thank you to Eric, thank you to James, thank you to Destroy TV and everyone else who's been in the chat having a great time for our F1 News Friday Night Live weekly roundup. It's been a lot of fun, hasn't it? I like the what I want to do, by the way, guys, is Friday night. I want it to be fun. We'll do a roundup, have a beer, drink a glass of wine. You can drive the show. We can talk about anything, talk about what you've liked and what you've not liked about the shows this week or the news this week, and we can discuss it. And Kyle, no more Yuki bashing, right? Let's see how he does in Singapore. He might just be turning it around. Listen, please smash a like on the video. Hit the bell to get notified of when we're going live again. I will be back with more F1 news probably tomorrow. So do keep a lookout for that. And if you're watching this on replay, you can still have your say on all the news and all the topics we've discussed. Get in the chat. I will respond to you all. Thank you so much to every one of you for getting involved in the show. Lots of fun tonight, and I will see you very, very soon. Ta-ta.